Justice is supposed to be blind. I mean, the symbol holding the scales, Lady Justice, blindfolded. Well, justice isn't always as blind as it should be, especially when it comes to the case against Richard Allen in Delphi, Indiana. He's accused of being the murderer of those two little girls. And it's been anything but a just experience thus far. If you've been following the case, you know exactly what I'm talking about. This here is the latest chapter in Justice Not Being So Blind. You may remember, for context, just the other day, the Indiana Supreme Court ruled on three different motions that the defense of Richard Allen raised. Number one, he wants his attorneys back, Baldwin and Rozzi, who were, I think most can argue, were unconstitutionally dismissed from representing Richard Allen, even though that was the counsel of his choice, clearly stated before and after them being removed. Gull didn't want anything to do with them. The timing of removing them was a little bit questionable, considering there was a Franks hearing that was about to take place. A Franks hearing is where they were going to investigate law enforcement and some improprieties that very likely took place leading up to the arrest and incarceration of Richard Allen and the charges that were brought against him. Why do you have a Franks hearing? To make sure that that was done correctly, because there's a lot of red flags there that show Tony Liggett and his crew, he's the police chief there in Delphi, weren't actually acting on the up and up. So why not take a look at that in depth? Right when they were about to do that, Francis Gull found a reason to dismiss the attorneys for Richard Allen. Oh, evidence leaked out of your office. Even though you didn't do it personally, you're taking responsibility for it. You're saying, yes, this person got in here, took this out of our private conference room, took pictures in our private conference room, and that should not have happened. We are not okay with this whatsoever. But in the end, Gull said, that's on you. And guess what? You can't represent him anymore. So he was out without representation and was assigned new attorneys from the state. Well, because that does violate his constitutional right to a counsel of his choosing, he got them back. The other two motions that were brought up, denied. One of those motions being Francis Gull, who's already demonstrated some prejudice and not exactly being blindfolded. She more so, I view her as someone holding scales, has a magnifying glass, and has like Dateline on in the background or something. Like holding her phone up, watching opinion pieces on the case. Something where it really truly shows not true impartialness that one would expect of a judge. And if you have any doubt about the impartialness, just take a look at this order that we're about to read. This really very much shows just how not impartial she is. So, attorneys for Richard Allen reinstated. Without missing a beat, Francis Gull, who was attempted to be removed, but still there, this to me just screams, completely screams of, ha 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 ha. You thought you'd get rid of me? Guess what? The court, having had defendant's motion for Frank's hearing filed September 18th of 2023, the memorandum for support of the accused motion for Frank's hearing filed September 18th, 2023, defendant's supplemental motion for Frank's hearing filed October 2nd, 2023, defendant's additional Frank's notice filed October 3rd, 2023, the state's objection to the defendant's motion to suppress filed June 13th, 2023, and the state's second objection to the defendant's motion to suppress filed September 25th, 2023, under advisement, now denies the defendant's motion for a Frank's hearing. You didn't want that Frank's hearing originally, did you? You're not even going to have a hearing about why you're denying this, are you? You're just going to do this. This is going to get dark. This is going to get twisted. And if Francis Gull doesn't get her shit together and doesn't stop going down some sort of a path of revenge, I don't know that's going to end very well for her. Maybe not right away, but I can't think career-wise this will end well if we're showing just blatant prejudice. Although, in Indiana, she got promoted. So maybe it will end well at the end of the day. Maybe it won't be career suicide for her, because it seems the more you just dig in there in Indiana and keep going with the narrative of what the police want you to do and what you've already dug yourself into without ever having any sort of hearing or looking at evidence, just sticking with what you think is right, That seems to be celebrated there in Indiana. So who knows? The court finds the affidavit submitted in support of the insurance of the search warrant contained information that a reasonable belief existed that evidence of the murders would be found at the defendant's home and vehicles. Did you find anything? The court does not find that the affidavit submitted false statements or that the affiant omitted statements with reckless disregard, nor does the court find that the affiant intended to mislead the judge by failing to present information. Even though you look back at the case, you go, yeah, it really appears that he did. But we're not going to have a hearing about that. We're not going to allow anyone to argue these points. You're just going to say, nope, didn't do that. Not true. Move on. La, 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 la. Thank you, Francis Gull, for being that impartial judge that everybody wants. And again, whether Richard Allen is guilty or not is not the point here. This is the judicial system not working correctly. This is pure prejudice because somebody has their narrative and they're going to go down that path and they're going to try and convict this man no matter what, come hell or high water. At the end of the day, all this shit will end up blowing up in their face because basically Richard Allen has a get a new trial free card because of all of the wrongs that were done to him and his attorneys thus far. So let's waste more time. Let's waste more of the family's time as they try to figure out who killed their little girls. Let's get caught up in our bullshit, Francis Gull, and just keep going down that road, shall we? That's what's happening. As the court has found the affidavit for insurance of such warrant was valid, the search itself was reasonable and legal under Indiana law and Fourth Amendment case law. Defendant's motion to suppress fruits of search of 1967 North Whiteman Drive, Delphi, Indiana, filed May 19th, 2023, is also denied based upon all the pleadings, memorandums, and exhibits previously submitted in support of the request for a Franks hearing. Defendant's motion in Lamine regarding ballistics, filed June 13th, 2023, is reviewed and denied without a hearing. These are all things that should have had a hearing. Why? Because that's how justice is done. You don't just get questionable evidence thrown at you or questionable investigation work thrown at you, which was clearly questionable. Clearly showing some prejudice on the part of Liggett trying to go down a road of, oh, we got something. We need to wrap this up because everybody's putting pressure on us for not really figuring anything out here. Yeah, you should have hearings to make sure that things are being done right, to make sure you get the right person. But we're not interested in that. We're just interested in trying to lock somebody up. Oh, and lock them up in a prison, a state prison, and put them in solitary confinement. Treat them like Hannibal Lecter, literally, without any sort of due process. Oh, and your right to a speedy trial, that was also denied by the Supreme Court, even though it's, one of your rights. Doesn't matter anymore. If a court says it's not your right, apparently they overrule the Constitution now in Indiana. The court finds the evidence contained in the defendant's exhibits A and B attached to the motion relevant and admissible. The court further finds the probative value of such evidence is not substantially outweighed by its prejudicial impact and that the evidence will not confuse or mislead the jury, even if the evidence is questionable and very misleading. But hey, that's why we have a hearing, so we can determine those sort of things and hear oral arguments about them before putting this stuff in front of a jury. That's how the court system is supposed to work, but not Francis Gull's. Defendant's motion to transfer, filed January 12, 2024, taken under advisement, pending the state's response, if any, and a hearing to be set. State's motion to offend information, filed January 18th, 2024, will be set for a remote hearing. So the only good thing out of this is hinting that maybe we'll take a look at that transfer request. Remember that transfer request that we went over the other week? That goes into great detail about how Richard Allen's being treated like Hannibal Lecter, about the accounts of abuse that he's enduring. He shouldn't be in a state prison. When you're arrested on a crime, you go to county jail. And that's where you sit until your trial is done. What happens to Brian Koberger? That's where he's at right now. That's where Rex Heuermann is. It's where Alec Murdaugh was before being convicted. It's where most people go. But for some reason in this case, we can't handle Richard Allen, that crazy CVS employee with no criminal record, who's short, really doesn't have a big muscular stature by any stretch of the imagination. That's a danger there. Oh, but he's not a danger to other people. It's people in that jail will get him. Maybe you should figure that out then. Create an environment where you can hold prisoners that are being held over for trial, because that's how that's supposed to work. Meanwhile, his attorneys, when they do visit him in the state prison, have to go talk to him through a food hole in the door, while guards stand around watching with Odinism tattoos on their face. But Odinism has nothing to do with this case. There's so many things wrong in this story. If you're interested in the pursuit of justice, you should be irate. And it's a shame because this totally takes the attention off of the case itself, off of getting justice for those two little girls. But in order to get justice for those two little girls, justice has to be done blindly. Richard Allen has to get a fair trial. And as of right now, anything but that has occurred. What happens next? Your guess is as good as mine. Richard Allen could very easily, as we've seen him deteriorate in prison, yes, prison for the last year, likely die. And I'm starting to wonder if that's what they're counting on. Because Richard Allen seems to have some information. The attorneys seem to have some information that might not shed the brightest light on the folks in Delphi, Indiana, or their judicial system. Light that may end careers. Why would we want that to happen? Why would we want to get justice for those two little girls when keeping your job is more important than just raising a hand going, hey, maybe we should take a second look at this. Maybe we were wrong. If you do that, you can keep your career as long as you didn't do anything really bad, like cover something up. Or maybe, did that happen? Is that why we can't have hearings? Is that why he's in a prison rotting away? What are you covering up? I'm sure we'll find that out very soon.